Hi, I'm Shlomo Klapper, and since we've had a lot of content, I'm just going to show you pretty pictures. So the idea here was to take some elements of stylometrics, of quantifying differences in judicial style and the features of judicial opinions, and then seeing how they vary between states. So this slide is kind of busy, but it's going to go through. We're going to see this a lot over the next couple of slides. So there are basically 5 areas that I focus on. The first was trying to find measures of informality. So opinions that have more, that begin with conjunctions, or that have used the second person, you or yours, score higher on the informality. And if they use more Latin legal terminology, I just created a Latin, like a dictionary of common legal Latin terms, then that's more formal. The second is talk about brevity. A lot of legal writers talk about the importance of being brief. I mentioned that. Lexical diversity, also just use the type token ratio. There's also, I sort of made this, honestly a lot of this came from my friend Nina Varsava, who's awesome. Sort of borrowed her dictionary of decisive terms and sort of subtracted out the less decisive terms. And then the last one is that there is these sort of built-in packages in Spacey that talked about polarity and subjectivity. So I just sort of saw how those changed between the states. I should have announced there's a betting pool in the back about where states rank on each of these. You could still enter that now. Okay, so beginning with informality. And with the conjunctions, this is sort of the distribution between states of how many of which states use conjunctions to begin with. And this is sort of like a map. You see that there are a number of states that rank really that rank quite highly on this. Sort of Maine, Virginia, Kentucky, Rhode Island, Delaware, actually names that we're going to be seeing a lot over the next one. We'll see how these states differ. So that's the conjunctions. About the second person identifier, it actually was a lot more extreme, is that most states did not use it, and then there must be like a judge in Delaware that just writes in the second person. And again, this is sort of the leaderboard, Delaware being way above everybody else, sort of followed by Rhode Island, another repeat offender, and then everyone else is just bottoms out from there. So the last one is in terms of Latin. I do not speak Latin, but I was going to write the slides and spared you that writing in Latin. There is like a clump of people up front, and then again, it's a lot of sort of homogeneity throughout the states, which you could sort of see by these sort of like this heat map. And these numbers, which I guess are, you see sort of Rhode Island again, but here on the bottom. I'll sort of come back to that again. Okay, so informality, to sort of sum this all up, I just sort of added them all together and said, all right, conjunctions, second person, more informal Latin terms, less formal, and we have this distribution again, which actually gives a relatively, I put the wrong slide at the wrong place. This is the second person map. So you see like Delaware and Rhode Island, just sort of, I don't know what they teach in Delaware, but they must have like some tutor talking to judges. This is, so anyway, you can email me for the map about this, but basically there are some states, there seems to be different, like one of the takeaways from this is that there's a lot of difference between states. And like a follow-up project would be trying to see like why. Does it relate to being elected? Does it relate to the caseload? Does it relate to certain politics? There's a lot there. If anyone has any hypotheses, please let me know. Okay, so that was the informality. Brevity will be brief. So sentence length, more or less the same. I mean, there's just a little bit. I forgot to mention something that was really interesting is that if you'll notice, in each of these cases, the informality, Arizona is like a 0.
Yeah.
So there's no conjunctions, like no second person, but no Latin terms. It's like, I don't know what's going on with Arizona.
They
Like,
might have a style manual.
They do?
No, they might have.
They might have one. And the more surprising thing is judges listen.
Yeah.
Like, that's the more surprising.
Has anyone checked if we have cases from Arizona?
There are no judges in Arizona. There's a lawless place. So brevity, and here Arizona does come up, so I think there are cases from Arizona. There's, again, this sort of sliding scale with different pockets having longer, this is words, I'm sorry, I mixed up the slides. This is sort of like longer words versus shorter words, which actually correlates very strongly negatively with I'm sorry, I pasted the same graph, but sort of take my word for it, is that actually the longer words you have, the shorter sentences you have, which is odd, very odd. There's a very strong correlation there. I think it's like minus 0.77. Lexical diversity, the sort of same sort of pattern that we see before, but it's pretty tightly distributed, as you see by here. And there are no really interesting ones for the bottom one, so I didn't include those. In terms of decisive words versus less decisive words, again, I feel this is like I'm boring myself even. Like this is, I'm like, yeah, there's the same sort of sliding scale of differences, and there's more statistical analysis to see which ones are correlated with which other ones. There's actually interesting. So we have this spacey thing that's built in, and if people want to talk more about like what actually goes into it and how accurate this is, I have my doubts. But sort of let's just like take it on faith for a moment that it's fairly accurate. So we have the polarity again. You have this very strong outlier here, the state of Washington. I guess they're, I don't know if anyone's from Washington. I'm not going to make any Washington jokes, just in case they are. But again, there's very sort of strong things, sort of really outlier there. But again, with subjectivity, not so much of an outlier. Okay, so the title promised fun and profit. Unfortunately, we only have fun. Like, there's no profit. So there's a lot of difference between the states. Actually, on nearly everything, there's like difference between states, which is like interesting. It'd be more interesting to figure out like why there's differences. Like in terms of the training of judges, is there a manual? Are judges elected? Are they appointed? And there are some, I mean, just sort of off the bat there, without doing sort of, I didn't include the sort of more correlational analyses, but the Arizona has like 0 and 4 areas. Maybe they just, there are cases there, but I'm not sure what to make of those. They don't use any conjunctions, Latin terms, the second persons, nor do they use any of the decisive terms. Or they use the exact number of decisive terms and indecisive terms. But I just think they have this distinct style. Washington also has sort of, again, the most Latin terms, most linguistic diversity, most polarity by a long shot, and is like really ranked very low in sentence length and decisive terms. So it's not clear what these go together. Delaware, remember, is off the charts in the second person. Rhode Island also has this, I'm not sure if it's the law of small numbers or small states. They have this, they use many more Latin terms in second person terms, but use shorter sentences, use words rather than longer sentences, and have the most subjectiveness here. So I guess this is saying the bottom line is that there's a lot of fun to be had in the CAP Access project, and we're very grateful that y'all put so much work into this, and thank you.